If you want to get ahead, get a set of clubs. Have you ever believed in something that didn't hold to be true? Or during your career felt that you may have been a bit misled? I know I have. I'm Steve Smith, and for 30 years I worked on the sales and marketing of some of the world's most famous household brands, used by everyone in the room. And now I work mostly with startups and small businesses, helping them to achieve their vision. If you want to get ahead, get a set of clubs, was some advice shared with me early in my career. It was meant literally, and as I'd had no interest or involvement in golf, I was quite shocked. In the environment we were in, the guy sharing the advice was spot on. He rapidly rose through the ranks and had a very successful sales career. It was anathema to me, but over time I reflected on it, the advice being a metaphor for what you may need to do if you really want to succeed. When I started work many moons ago, we were advised that performance and ultimately your progression was a function of K, S, and A. Knowledge, skills, and attitude. And this wasn't just a workplace or business model. It can be applied in other areas like the sporting arena or the arts. Knowledge is important, of course. We need to know facts, information, processes, rules. We may need to know markets, clients, or even opponents. Knowledge takes time to build, but in the digital world, it's very easy to obtain. Skills are more innate. It could be motor skills like hand-to-eye coordination, or it can be interpersonal or communication skills, or the ability to analyze data. With skills, you can develop them and learn them over time through training and coaching. Then comes attitude. That's much more individual and internal. Hunger, desire, the will to win, the drive for self-improvement. Do you ever go the extra mile to get the right result? A great attitude can often overcome deficiencies in skills and knowledge. I fully bought into KSA and believed that that was the way forward. But I was naive. A simple northern lad who thought that if you did a really good job, you'd be recognised and you'd progress automatically. A pure meritocracy, if you like. But, and it's a big but, I started to see other graduate starters moving ahead of me. I started to see people who weren't as knowledgeable or with lesser skills getting promoted quicker. I had a really positive, committed attitude. So what was happening? What else was going on? I realised that there was more to it than KSA. And that's what brought me to Kasaku. It's not a new Zen philosophy, but it probably applies to us all. So the C stands for confidence. And if you look up confidence in a dictionary, it will talk about having certainty in your abilities, or little self-doubt, or trust in people, plans, or the future. You can have a great attitude, but still lack confidence. And that's because I see confidence as a spectrum. At one extreme, you've got people maybe quite timid, lacking in conviction. Well, there you've got the arrogant and uber confident people who believe that they can do no wrong, and they're dangerous. The sweet spot is in the middle. People who are assured and accomplished. They have great self-belief, but they also build confidence in others. But they retain a level of humility that keeps them in check. So there's lots of things that can undermine your confidence and potentially put you in a vicious circle. It can be relatively trivial things like bad hair day, or one that happened to me recently where I spilt coffee all down my shirt just before I was doing a presentation. But then there's the more serious, sinister behaviours, those with a modus operandi, lupus est homo homini, Latin for man is wolf to mankind. They seek out and prey on the weakness of others for their own gain. Let me take you back to a sales meeting in the early 90s. It's the end of the day, and I happened to say to a colleague, "I'm hungry, I'm looking forward to my tea." A well-spoken manager leaned over and said, "Tea? Tea? It's not tea. You're working for Procter and Gamble now. Your evening meal is dinner." He might not sing like much, but he acted like a confidence vampire. I felt all my self-belief draining away. It made me feel like I didn't belong. It hurt at the time, but I still say tea. What do you all say? It's tea, isn't it? But let's be more positive and think there's lots of things that you can do to build your confidence and access a virtuous circle where confidence builds belief, builds competence and success, and more confidence. It can be simple things like just looking after yourself, taking care, or as Stephen Covey termed it, habit 7, sharpen the saw. For example, are you getting enough sleep? Then you can read books, you can read blogs, you can watch videos, you can listen to podcasts, and you can embrace training. And lots of it is available for free. And then do you open up to friends and mentors? I passionately believe that who shares grows. So that brings us to Kasaku. What's missing? Well, there might still be a game that you've got to play. You need to understand the environment and the culture around you, how best to perform, how best to position yourself. And then we need the self-awareness to understand what matters to you, what your own values are. You is understanding. And you can think of understanding like goodwill or intangible assets on a balance sheet. Difficult to specifically define, but really valuable. It could be navigating internal meetings or processes or personalities, or it could be the nuances of tender frameworks or the investment community or the education sector. What language do they speak in that ecosystem? What are the hot buttons you need to press? Who do you need to speak to? What should you say to them? Where and when? And understanding when to push yourself forward, but also when to hold back and keep quiet. These things can make a real difference. Now, due to the background, education, maybe even geography, in the business world, some people have a bit of a head start. Their schooling may cover items in addition to the core curriculum, life skills, confidence, self-promotion. They may have a family background where there's strong professional or business influence. So they inherit a style or deportment that sets them apart. They're shaped and molded for success. And responsibility and progression is an expectation, not just an ambition. They always know how to talk the talk even if they don't know how to walk it. Now, this doesn't mean that Northerners with strong accents or from a state school can't get to the top. There are plenty who do. Sir Terry Leahy's leadership of Tesco and Greg Jackson of Octopus Energy are great examples. But understanding isn't covered in textbooks or on training courses. You work it out for yourself, or you have a champion or mentor helping you along, or else you may quickly reach a glass ceiling. Understanding, as I've said, is difficult to define. And you can just ignore this or dismiss it as office politics. But it is real. It does exist. And even though maybe it shouldn't, understanding will often eclipse knowledge, skills, and attitude. So that's thinking about the environment, but what about yourself? What's important? What matters? I spent many years in big companies building big brands, and I really enjoyed it, and I was good at it. But what I came to appreciate was what I really loved was building the people behind the brands, which is why I shifted more towards coaching. So to bring Kasaku together, I'd like to share a sporting example and take you back to Wembley Stadium in 1966. But I'm not talking about Sir Alf Ramsey, the Three Lions, and England's World Cup. Nah. We're in Wigan. We're in the heartland of rugby league. And Wigan were taking on the arch rival St Helens in the biggest game of all, a Challenge Cup final. They'd met in the final 5 years before, and St Helens had edged a close game. So Wigan were thirsting for revenge. And they had one of the greatest players, Billy Boston, now Sir Billy Boston. There's a statue of him in front of this building. St Helens had a mercurial talent of their own called Alex Murphy, or Murph the Mouth. He was also a top player, and later as a coach, he claimed to provide the blueprint for Wigan's future domination. But on this occasion, he was very much the opposition. Now, Murphy had it all. He was steeped in rugby. He had great knowledge of the game from excelling at both rugby union and rugby league. He'd also had trials for Everton, so he had great skill with the ball in hand and played at feet. He had a win at all costs attitude and the confidence and swagger of someone playing at the top of their game. However, it was his unique understanding of the rules and how to exploit Wigan's weakness that proved crucial. Wigan's first choice hooker, a key position, couldn't play. So Murphy had a plan. He used his understanding to realise that by conceding penalties, St Helens could easily win the ball back from the resulting scrum. So when Wigan were building momentum, Murphy stood offside. He had the confidence and understanding to blatantly bend the rules in front of 100,000 people, half of whom were baying for his blood. In Wigan, Murphy was a cheat, a charlatan, a sinner. A few miles down the road, he was a genius, Saint Alex. St Helens won comfortably, and the rules were subsequently altered to prevent this happening again. Knowledge, skills, and attitude are rarely enough. That's the whole why. So if you want to get ahead, the clubs you need are not woods and irons or drivers and putters. They're called confidence and understanding. Kasaku. It took me a while to get there, but you've heard it here first tonight. Thank you very much, Wigan. Good night.